Well, good morning and welcome back to CityLine. With me, I have two wonderful individuals that I think that you are going to enjoy hearing from. They are here to talk about the equity and human rights here in Tacoma as it pertains to housing and employment. So please join me in welcoming Thomas Okai-Asare. You are a civil rights investigator. What a great title.
Yes,
I think everybody should be a civil rights investigator, but I think that we especially need more of them that do it full time. So welcome to CityLine.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. Mr. Wesley Taylor, you are the Fair Housing Program Coordinator.
Yes.
Welcome, my friend. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
All right, let's get some sock cam on these socks. Okay, hold it up. Let's see how I can, a little higher. Okay, see the camera there, Wesley? See a little higher. Ta-da! This morning we have dots. Oh, and the back of your heel is red.
Yes.
Okay, you had no idea I was going to put you on sock cam, did you?
Nope.
Well, next time you're on, now the bar has been developed there. So let's talk about this. I mentioned that both of you have different areas of investigation, but let's delve into it just a little bit more. So let's talk about each area and what it encompasses. And go ahead and go first here, Mr. Thomas.
Yeah, I investigate discrimination in your employment.
Okay.
So a business that you have an employee-employer relationship with. And I also investigate discrimination in places of public accommodation. So a business in Tacoma that offers you a service, they need to treat you equally.
Okay, excellent. Okay, and then Wesley, let's talk about your area of expertise.
So for me, similar to what Thomas does, I deal with discrimination in housing. So if a tenant is having issues of being discriminated against and they believe it could be for a protected class, either at the federal level or at the state level or at the city level, they'll talk to me about it and we can kind of talk about if there is something going forward on that part or not.
Wow. Okay, so for both of you, so then it gets into, so what laws do you enforce? And let's start with you, Wesley.
So there's laws set forward that are brought down from the national level, and that's basically the Title 8, the Fair Housing Act, if you will.
Right.
And there's implications in that in the housing that give individuals who reside in housing, whether it be private or public, protection. So they can't be discriminated against based on protected classes such as race, national origin, and some other areas. And there's specific areas that people are protected on at the state and city levels as well, such as veteran status or gender identity.
Okay, so they do, as I just heard you say, they vary in terms of state and federal.
Correct.
Boy, so you've got a lot of balancing there you have to do. Let's talk about some of the laws that you enforce.
Yeah, I enforce Title 7 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which outlaws discrimination in terms of race, in terms of sex, in terms of national origin. Also, I enforce the Americans with Disabilities Act, making sure that individuals with disabilities have equal access to goods and services. Also, the Age Discrimination in Employment Act, the ADEA, making sure individuals over the age of 40 are not discriminated against in terms of employment, just simply because they're over the age of 40 years old.
That whole ageism that we hear about sometimes. So Wesley, you mentioned this phrase, protected class. Let's go back and let's kind of just talk about what is a protected class.
So a protected class is kind of like a class of individuals, such as, and Thomas kind of alluded to this, like national origin, people that have the same national origin or people that have the same race. It's a protected class of individuals. So if another individual is a landlord, for example, discriminated against somebody because of a protected class, they could actually be protected under the Federal Housing Act or one of the other acts that we follow.
Okay, so give me an example of a protected class as it pertains to housing.
Race, for example,
Okay.
would be a protected class.
Okay.
National origin, a protected class.
Okay.
And those are just the few. And a lot of what the protected classes are for housing are very similar to those at the employment discrimination as well.
Okay. This is such good information. So let's talk about how someone files a complaint, Thomas, because it's got to be a long road to the point where you decide you're going to file a complaint. Our social media is full of stories of people who have filed complaints, who are filing a lawsuit. We don't always hear how it turns out, or we don't hear the backstory, or what led up to it.
Yeah.
So share some light on that. How do you file a complaint and what's involved?
Well, based on just what you're saying, because a lot of the individuals, when they file a complaint with us, they're in a hard time, going through a difficult time in their life. So we at the city, we're dedicated to making it as easy as possible. If you go to our website, the City of Tacoma, and if you go to Tacoma 311 first, you go to online requests, and then if you have a complaint based on discrimination or based on employment or public accommodation, you hit a drop-down menu once you get into 311, and then there's an employment/discrimination intake form. And also, if you have a complaint in housing that my colleague handles, when you go back to that drop-down menu, if you go all the way down to a housing intake form, then you can submit both of those requests online. You can also call us at the city. And we are there from 8 to 5 every day fielding calls. You can also walk in, but we prefer, just because we want to make sure we have equitable resources for everybody, that folks make an appointment or they call us.
Absolutely, you want to have time, because I would imagine, I can just see both of yours inbox, and to have someone walk in doesn't do them a service, nor the service that you provide. It doesn't give them enough time, or you enough time, to really help them in the way that they need. So what's the most common misconception, Thomas, about filing a civil rights claim?
A big misconception is just because somebody does something rude to you, that it is it's a violation of civil rights law.
Well, this could be a whole show.
Well, yeah, for example, in the state of Washington, a person can hire you or fire you for any reason except those outlawed under the various civil rights acts, like your disability, your age, your race, your sex, or your national origin. Just because a person might have a personality conflict with another person, that's reason enough to fire a person. Secondly, with the way the discrimination laws are written, you need to have evidence supporting your claim. That way it doesn't really devolve into so much the he said, she said kind of thing. You need to have documentary evidence, or people who saw what happened, or something that you can hang your hat on, so it's not just something that you said.
Exactly. So on the coattails of that, Wesley, what does it take to have a successful claim?
So a successful claim, if you will, or case would be something that has a nexus or a connection between the discrimination and the act actually done. And so if it can't be alleged. And we're here to kind of break it down to say if there is, in fact, that's part of our investigation, is to find if there is a actual discrimination taking place as a protected class. And we deal with it on a day-to-day basis versus individuals or the public. And so when in doubt, just call us if you have any type of questions or inquiries of discrimination, because if it's not discrimination, we can at least get you steered in the right direction.
I love that. So how long does an investigation usually take, Thomas?
Well, in housing, with a complaint with housing, it has to be under 100 days.
Okay.
With employment, it can take up to 3 months,
Wow.
typically.
Okay.
We always aim to be under those numbers and get claims processed as quickly and as expeditiously as possible, but we don't want to sacrifice quality just for speed. Quality is really important to us, and we want to make sure we're providing the citizens with the service that they deserve.
Absolutely. So Wesley, as I think about people filing a complaint, I would imagine one of the concerns is, will my information be safe?
Yes.
Okay.
Good
answer, right answer.
Right. We don't give out our information. By any means, when somebody turns around and files a complaint, they're protected.
Yes.
And it kind of it discloses that information. As soon as the parties are aware of a complaint has been filed, they're given letters saying there can be no retaliation based on this individual alleging a means of discrimination. Okay. They'll find out the outcome, of course, during the finding if we determine if there is cause or no cause of discrimination in housing or employment.
Okay. So what hours can I file a complaint, Thomas?
From 8 o'clock a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m.
Perfect. And you've given us the website and the phone number. And lastly, if you have to walk in, it's there. But again, it's not the best resource given that you have other clients that you are trying to give the time they need for that process. If the claim is successful, what do people usually get? And let's start with you first, then we'll end with you.
It's a case-by-case basis, but usually if we're resolving a claim of discrimination in your employment, there's an option of getting your job back, but a lot of people don't want to go back into the situation where they're discharged
Absolutely.
or suffered discrimination. So usually it's a monetary sum, a settlement.
Okay. All right. And then for housing?
A lot of times what it is education. In housing, we want to make sure that landlords and tenants know their rights, and some landlords don't know what the rules are as it pertains to discrimination in housing. So we really push an emphasis besides that, in addition to making sure that people are housed. We know Tacoma is one of those areas where housing is an issue, and it's basically kind of a large national level, the same way with employment. We don't want people to feel feared if I have to kind of go through this justification or this reasoning for being discriminated against to keep my housing or to keep my employment. We want them to go through the process, file the claim. If there is discrimination, lead forward on a path of resolving these issues so they're not occurring time and time again.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it really, you said it so well, it really is education on both sides. And I can imagine that comes at sometimes kind of a crunchy, fearful price. But at the same time, if you don't raise your hand and say something, are you part of the problem or are you part of the solution? And I think that, as Michael Mira said, we want to give people a chance to live a life without fear. And absolutely, the equity and human rights in Tacoma with employment and with housing does that. Thank you so much for doing what you do, for making it so accessible, and for being here today on CityLine. You two are fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
My pleasure. When we come back, the Tacoma Children's Museum will be here to talk about the Power of Play Luncheon. You don't want to miss that. We'll be right back.